Hello, everyone. Welcome back to this week's episode of Ancast Podcast. This week on the show, we've got Toby Gribben. He's a radio host on Shout Radio. Welcome, Toby.
Hello, good afternoon. How are you?
Not too bad, not too bad. So it's good we've got someone from the radio part of broadcast media on the show, and I'd love to find out a little bit about the sort of guests that you come on and maybe your interview style. What's your style then, Toby?
Well, I don't really know what my style is, to be honest, but it's definitely not kind of news night, that's for sure. I think if I had a politician on, I would just ask them about their career in general and probably wouldn't really challenge them on anything, which would probably annoy some people, but whatever. I guess it's kind of friendliness. Um, a lot of the time, the underlying goal of the interview is if somebody has something to promote. So I guess I'll ask them a lot about that thing. Yeah, I don't really know what my style is. Maybe that's up to somebody else to determine. I don't know.
Sure, but so have you ever interviewed any politicians then?
No, actually, I don't think so. I don't remember. Well, there was someone who coincidentally ran for parliament once, but he was talking about a book mainly. And I did have Steve Nallin, who did Margaret Thatcher on Spitting Image, but that's the closest I've ever
Oh,
got.
right.
Yeah.
That's a great guest to have on your radio show for sure. So how long have you been doing it then, Toby?
Well, I've been doing radio as a whole for about 9 years, so I'll maybe have to do some sort of 10-year special thing. And then interviewing about a year. Yes, I think
Yeah.
it's a year this week actually that I did the first ever one. And I've interviewed about 250 people now in this last year, which is crazy when you think about it, because that's like nearly every day. Uh, yeah.
Yeah. And so what did the interviewing start? Well, did it coincide with you having your own show essentially?
Um, Not really. I think about 4 months after starting the show I'm doing now, I started doing interviews. Because I'd previously done like film reviews and stuff like that, but I was getting a bit bored of that because I don't really know much about what makes a good film. So I was just spending like 10 minutes talking rubbish and struggling. So it's a lot easier to ask a question and have somebody else speak, and you get a load of content. So I think about last September, I just started looking for people really, and it kind of grew from there. And I think the show is a lot better now that it's got guests on it, and I guess it helps have a range of voices on the air and doesn't bore people, I think.
Yeah, no, that's great. So, what type of people have you got on then, or do you have a favorite sort of person who comes on?
Oh, I don't know about favorite. I think most people that come on are musicians and authors and sometimes podcast hosts and all sorts of interesting people. I've had a few puppeteers that I've invited on who have
Okay.
worked with the Muppets and other things. I suppose I enjoy interviewing them. I mean, sometimes interviewing musicians can be a bit repetitive, I think, especially kind of rappers. They all seem the same to me, but don't tell them I said that. Yeah. And yeah, all sorts of famous people I like to get on. That's always exciting, I think. Anyone that's famous, that's my favorite people.
Who's the most famous you've interviewed then?
Probably Melanie, who sung the song Brand New Key and Look What They Done to My Song Ma. She was one of only 3 women to perform at Woodstock. Did that one about a month ago, so that was exciting. Yeah, I'm on the lookout for more famous people. So if you know
Yeah,
any famous people that say yes to interviews from small stations, then let me know.
yeah, for sure, for sure. And so, how long is the interview, or do you do more than one interview on your show?
Yeah, usually because my show is on Thursdays and Fridays. So usually I do about four on a Thursday and three on a Friday. And it varies. On an average show, there's usually one 20-minute interview, one 15-minute interview, one 10-minute interview, and one 5 or 7-minute interview. Um, But obviously, if it's somebody really famous, like as I mentioned, Melanie, that one was about an hour and a bit, just because there's so much to talk about. And, she's had a long career. So I want to spend that extra time. So that interview had basically a whole show dedicated to it. So yeah, it kind of varies. I think the shortest I've ever done is about 5 minutes or so, and the longest is, I think, an hour and 23 minutes is my longest on record so far.
Right. Okay. That's a long time to do an interview.
Yeah.
So before you got into the hosting and the interviewing, you said you've been in radio for quite a long time. Well,
Yeah.
what made you choose radio? Did you just kind of fall into it, or was it intentional sort of thing?
Yeah, I don't really know, to be honest. I think when I was a child, I always wondered, like, how does that work? How can this thing that isn't connected to any kind of, well, it's connected to a plug, obviously, but sometimes it isn't even. But, it's not connected by wires to anything. It's coming through the air. How is this working? How am I able to hear this person in my house? And I still don't really know for sure how it works. But yeah, I was always fascinated by it, and then I guess I must have along the way thought, well, maybe I could try that. Um, and I think the very first things I did were terrible with the kind of using the laptop inbuilt microphone kind of thing. That's how bad it was. Um, and yeah, I don't really know why anyone would have wanted to listen to anything I did at the very
Yeah.
beginning, and I don't think many people did, apart from maybe like family members. I don't know. Yeah. Um,
Was
and
you was you ever involved in what I call traditional radio, so sort of over the airwaves, or is it all just
uh,
digital these days, Toby?
yeah, it's all kind of online. I've done. Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever done. I think I happened to be on a station that was on DAB for a while last year, but I didn't really like doing that because it was voice tracked, and I prefer to do
Yeah.
it live actually at the moment.
Yeah, because I was interested if there's any change in mindset, from
Yeah.
the over the air to sort of pure digital stations.
Mm.
Because I
I
know,
guess.
like, for example, the pirate radio stations, they've moved off being sort of pirate over the airwaves onto digital now.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
guess now with Alexa, it's maybe more accessible to listen to internet radio, because before you would have had to actually use a computer or a phone, which I guess isn't really practical to listen to a radio show. But with Alexa, a lot of people are listening to FM and DAB stations on that anyway. So,
Yeah.
online radio can take off that way.
Yeah, yeah. And so, have you got any, sort of aspirations in radio still, or are you happy doing the hosting and interviewing?
I don't really know. I think something I've thought about recently for some reason is, wouldn't it be great if I was doing this same show when I'm like 80, and you can just see like how my videos of interviews or something just progressively age over the years. I don't know. It would kind of be cool to do the same show, because I wonder what's the record for the longest running radio show by one person on like the same station. It
That
can't
would
be
be
that much.
interesting to know. Yeah.
Yeah, because I was thinking, like, only, like, the longest shows that I've known are only, like, 20 years or something in the UK anyway, so, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And so, how do you prepare for the interview, or is it just freestyle? And do you do a bit of research on the
Yeah.
guest, or do you just bowl in and off you go?
Well, I guess it's a little bit of both, really, because if it's something like a musician, I just kind of have to listen to their music, and then I know what I'm doing. Because I've interviewed so many people like that before, it's sort of similar questions. But if it's somebody in a subject that I'm not really familiar with, then I kind of have to force myself to do a bit of research and come up with questions, because I have no idea what to ask them. And I guess probably most of the questions I ask now are stuff that I just think of in my head at the time, either based on something somebody said or just the pressure of having to come up with something in the moment. And another thing I've noticed recently is sometimes I start asking a question and I don't know where it's going to end. And that's a really weird thing but I think a lot of people in maybe similar professions have come across that idea that they don't actually know what they're saying.
Yeah, well, you might end up going down the rabbit hole, which is, it's not a bad place to go.
Yeah, definitely. I don't know. You might say something and not know what you're going to say, and then it turns out you said something racist, which could be very problematic. I don't know.
Well, definitely. And so about Shout Radio, then, is it a community based radio? What's the history like? Has it been going a long time?
It's going for 8 years now, 2013, but I only joined last year, so I'm a bit of a new guy, although I'm already in the management team, it seems. So, I guess they like new people. Yeah, it's kind of a community station online for Cheshire and Blackpool, but when we actually look at our listener stats, we're popular all around the world, really. So, and we don't really do much anymore that kind of makes us sound like a community station. So I don't really know how much of that we kind of stick to, really.
Yeah, because I guess you must get some analytics on the places where people are tuning in from, right?
Yeah, definitely. We seem to be quite popular in France and Russia for some reason,
Oh,
which
right.
is weird. I don't know if they understand what we're saying, presumably so, or they just like the music. Yeah, my show's on Thursday and Friday, 3 till 6 in the afternoon, if you're
Yeah.
interested. But of course, the whole station is on 24/7 with all sorts of different people doing their own shows at different times.
Yeah, so it's on in the afternoon, sort of like a drive time sort of slot, is it?
Yeah, I guess you could call it drive time. Yeah.
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 And so do you think I always am curious of when people find their sort of ideal role in their particular part of broadcast media. So the parts of radio you've been in before the hosting, you've
Yeah.
moved on to hosting. So do you think you're happy in how you're currently in radio now?
Yeah, I think so. And I think, interviews particularly are probably my favorite part because I've finally found the thing that sound like is a good idea to have on the show, if that makes sense. I've finally
Yeah.
found content that isn't just rubbish. And I enjoy meeting new people, all sorts of people from different backgrounds, because, you have all sorts of people from all sorts of parts of the world and places, and you get to there's not really any other job in the world where you get to spend an hour talking to a famous person. So
Yeah.
it's great to do that.
Do you really like to ask, like, the deep questions, like really get underneath the bonnet of people, sort of thing?
I don't know, I try to, but the thing is I'm always scared of asking like really deep questions or personal questions because I'm concerned that they might not like that and they might be like, actually I'd prefer not to talk about that or whatever. But
Oh, they might not come back on the show, right?
yeah, definitely.
So how big's the radio station? Is there, plenty of other presenters on there? Is there a sort of big sort of technical staff? Is it based in a building? Is it everyone home working or?
Well, we're kind of home working. We have had offices in the past. There might be a new one, but I'm probably not really allowed to say that. But yeah, and we kind of have a small management team of like 3 or 4 people. But in terms of actual overall presenters, quite a lot, I think, in the maybe 20s, 30s, or 40s. I don't know the actual number, but I can check that
Oh,
somewhere.
right. And so who decides the schedule of when the presenters have their shows then? Is it the management committee sort of thing?
Yeah, it's kind of like I'm in charge of like actually recruiting new people, so to speak. And basically, Aaron and Matt, the kind of 2 main managers, will sort of tell me what slots are free. And if those slots are free, then those people can have it, really. Yeah.
Yeah. And so do you get many people sort of sending, well, it used to be mixtapes back in the day, but how they send through their portfolio to be a possible presenter? Do you get many people like that wanting to have a slot?
Yeah, because we've recently kind of started a big recruitment drive, and we seem to be getting like a couple of people a day, which is
Right.
really good. They don't always send a demo, but a lot of them do. Um, and I think that people that don't send a demo, we can always try them out anyway. Because just because someone doesn't have a demo doesn't mean that they're terrible. There's only a small chance, I suppose.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So for the listeners, if they want to go to and listen to your show, it's on the internet. It's on
Yeah.
shoutradio.org.uk. Is that right, Toby?
Yes, that is correct.
Yeah, yeah. And I guess is there a schedule on there?
Yeah, you can just go to that website and then click on schedule, and you can find out when I'm on and when everybody else is on, really. And of
yeah.
course, if you'd like to join the station, then you can see what slots are free there as well.
Ah, right. Okay, that's might be useful for some of the listeners there.
Yeah, definitely.
Totally good. Well, I'd just like to say thank you, Toby. It's been great understanding a little bit more about radio, and thanks
Yeah.
very much for your time.
Well, thanks very much for having me on the show.
Take care.
Thanks.